to The Truth in His Heart. I am your host, Rob Lee. And today I'm excited to welcome my next guest, a multi-instrumentalist from Baltimore, Maryland. And from the age of 3, he was trained on the vibraphone, drums, and piano under the guidance of his father. Please welcome Warren Wolf Jr. Welcome to the podcast.
Pleasure to be here. Very cool.
I appreciate it, bro. Thank you for coming on. And I want to start off with sort of the introductory question, right? Like, you know, people want to know, like, how'd you get started and all of this stuff. So I want to ask you about your background. Where'd you grow up? Because, I see Baltimore, but we get real regional. We get high school level. So, I mean, you know how it goes. I want the city for context.
You want it all. Okay.
Hey.
Yeah. I'll take you all the way back. It's cool. So I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, off in the Druid Hill area, off of White Lock.
Okay.
There's a street called Francis Street. But I don't know anything about that because apparently we only lived there for 3 months. Right after that, my parents and I have 2 older sisters. We moved to Edmondson Village. I lived on a street called Mount Holly Street. And I was born in 1979, November of 79. We were pretty much there, to my knowledge, from 1980 all the way up until 1991 or 92. I'll let you continue from there.
Yeah. So, no, I appreciate that. So, definitely for me, Baltimore as well. Not in mid 80s, 85. Even though I'm told I look like I'm young, then I'm told I look like I'm old, and I'm like, look, I'm just trying to exist in this universe.
Yeah, exactly.
I had someone tell me, it's like, yeah, you look young till you get to your hairline. I was like, this is spicy. This is
Exactly.
real spicy. So talk about because obviously you're a musician. So talk about some of your early creative influences that maybe aren't music related. And so we will absolutely talk about music, but I want to get some of that context.
Early influences when it comes, just in general, music.
Yeah, just in general, not necessarily music, but just in general.
I don't recall really having any early influences because I was just a typical kid, man. Growing up in the hood. But it was actually really cool around that time because in my neighborhood there was a lot of kids my age and some of my sister's age, but we were all just a big family. We all just hung out all the time. My elementary school is called Lyndhurst Elementary. It was no more than 2 blocks away, so all the kids went there. And then when we came home, again, early 80s, man, we were, unlike a lot of kids today, we were playing outside very often. Behind our house, we had 3 alleys. So me and my sister still talk. One of the youngest of the sisters, I'm the baby, but we talk about this all the time. We used to call it the first alley, the first alley, middle alley, and the third alley. It's just kids used to be running around there, just playing flips on dirty mattresses. We would cut the bottom of milk crates out and nail them to the a light post, and that was our basketball hoop because the park was kind of far for us to walk. Yeah. Matter of fact, I even went back to that old neighborhood. I still have some friends over there, but I went back to that old neighborhood maybe a few months ago, and I walked down that same alley that I'm talking about, and I looked at that light post, and I kind of got emotional because I was like, all of these nails that we put up there from the 80s are still there. You know what I mean? Yeah, so, these same alleys that we played in, that we used to play tag football. Yeah. Again, I was just a normal kid, man. We used to play, just hang out and all that good stuff. My parents were very much there for me and my sisters. But with my dad being so militant, and unlike a lot of the kids in my neighborhood, and I'm not going to say this about every one of them, but for the most of them, they didn't have any goals in life, at least not until much later. Yep. Most of the kids I grew up with, they were just straight gangbangers. You know what I mean? Yep. So my father was in the Vietnam War. but he was once he got out of there, which is early 70s, you know, he struggled like most Black Americans who came out the war.
Yeah.
And he tried to figure it out. So that's when he went back to school, and he went to Morgan State and Coppin State. I want to say University of Maryland, College Park, but that's not ringing a bell. For some reason, I just want to say Morgan State and Coppin. Yeah. And he got his history degree.
Nice.
And education. My mother, she worked at a Baltimore Gas and Electric Company. And my father has always been into music. Mm. So his father, his name is my grandfather, James Wolfe, was a local pianist who played in the Baltimore area in the 40s and 50s, maybe 60s and stuff like that. And my dad came from a pretty big family. Including him, it was 6 boys, my uncles, and 5 girls. So my father, 11 children total that my grandparents had.
Yeah.
These are on my dad's side. So my father always wanted to play because he used to see his dad jamming with his friends.
Yeah.
But his father never taught him. So my father, being the historian, the person that he was like, you know what, I'm going to just go read these books, and he was a big fan of music. So my oldest sister was born in December of 70. He came home. He was in Vietnam for 2 years. Mm-hmm. He had a break. They gave him a break to come home. He came home in March. I think he went in 69. He came home in March of 1970 for a month. Married my mother. She got pregnant. Then he had to go back.
I mean, I'm hearing similarities. My dad's a vet. I have a sister that's 13 years older than me. That was born in 72.
Okay.
I mean, it was like a regular kid, playing in East Baltimore. We had we lived in Lafayette Projects. And,
okay.
So we would like try to make that whole area our like play area. It's like, oh, let's we didn't have nails. We would take, the zip ties. Mm-hmm. We would mount the zip ties with the crates after we cut the bottoms out to the fence. That's the jankiness we were on. And but definitely, I think that sort of regimented thing, the going into Vietnam and all of that stuff, it definitely transfers over to the kids as to there was structure in our house of you're going to get up at this time. This is what we're going to do. This is what the setup is. Whereas kids that I, maybe was hanging out with, I was playing with, it's just like they may not have been doing that same thing. They may not have had like a dad around or anything along those lines. So, but I will say this, I think some of the early stuff and what I'm doing now and doing interviews and facilitating storytelling and such, I always had a little bit of a knack for that when I was a kid, of like telling people about, hey man, you seen this movie? And then going through the whole thing, being one of those kids.
Yep.
And I think a part of that comes from like the movies that my dad was into. I always go back and look at these terrible like action movies, like Van Damme movies or some movie with vet in it. And he's like, yeah, this is a good one. And that's where my movie sensibilities come from. So my understanding is you're growing up super young, like I think 3, right? And your dad was just teaching you a bit of music. Tell me about that.
Yeah, because I think somewhere right before I was born, because since his father didn't teach him, he just became a fan of like percussion, just of music. Mm-hmm. So I was born in 79. Like I said, my oldest was born in 70. My other sister was born in 74. Then I came along in 79. And I think right around this time, because my dad was a huge fan of Rory Ayers, and Bobby Hutcherson. Rory was definitely a straight ahead jazz vibraphonist, but he has since switched over to more like mainstream in the 70s. And then Bobby Hutcherson was just another favorite of his. So off of that note, he just randomly bought a vibraphone. I have no idea why. Could have bought a saxophone, trumpet, whatever, but he randomly bought a vibraphone. So I came along and he started giving me lessons because I guess he wanted me to have, different times back then, a lot of fathers, they had a goal for their, this is his words. He was like, yeah, I know I got 2 daughters, but this is my son. So he had a goal for me. You're going to play. Now, what I actually wanted to do,
Yeah.
coming up as a kid, it wasn't actually sports. A lot of people think that, they seem they're like, you must have played football or something because of my size. I was like, nah, I actually wanted to work for NASA.
Again, I'm hearing similarities. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid. I'm 6'4", and they were like, "Yeah, you big for nothing." I was like, "Look, I wanted to do this."
Yeah. So I wanted to work for NASA, and if that didn't work out, I wanted to work for the fire department.
Mm-hmm.
Those were like my two things. But my dad was like, "No, you're going to stick with this music." So, he started giving me formal lessons at the age of 3. So pretty much my daily schedule was this: I would walk, again, early 80s, kind of safer in the neighborhood a little bit. I could walk to school. School was only 2 blocks.
Right.
Walk to school, not kindergarten, because kindergarten for me was only half a day. I went there from like 8 to 12 or something like that. But once first grade came around, school was pretty much like 8 to 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
My parents was like, come on home, because my mom didn't get off work until 4, and Pops didn't get off until 3, but he had to drive back because I think at the time he was working at the old Northern High School. Mm. Over there on the east side. And then my sisters, they were coming from Western High School, whatever else, where they were coming. It was far. So this was the rule: go home, open the door, close the door, just go upstairs and do what you want to do. And I was a pretty cool kid. This is when Nintendo had just came out. So I would just go up there, I would be playing that. So by the time everybody got home, this was the schedule. It's like I had 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half to watch TV, play video games. It was time to go in that basement and start practicing. At 3 years old. Now I'm playing multiple instruments. My dad was like, okay, you're going to play vibraphone / marimba, same thing, kind of, just, different wood structures and metal. So we're going to do 30 minutes on that. We're going to do 30 minutes on the actual drum set or snare drum studies. Then we're going to do another 30 minutes on piano. And then after that, so that was 5:30. That went until 7 o'clock. And then after that, I had to, do homework, eat dinner, get ready for the next day. But that practice schedule right there was 5 days a week from the age of 3 until 18.
Wow.
Summertime, we doubled that. So actually, I got to throw this in there too. In order for me to get a better understanding of the instrument, not just playing and soloing and stuff like that, I started taking classical lessons. So my dad enrolled me at John Hopkins at Peabody Preparatory. Yeah. So my mom would drive me down there every Saturday. She would wait in the room for me, and I studied with this guy. The first guy, his name was Leo LePage. He's now deceased, but he was a member of the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra for many years. Mm-hmm. He was also a jazz drummer because before he came to Baltimore, he lived in Boston. So he played jazz a little bit, but his main thing was classical. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise that I had this guy and my father, teaching me both. Yeah. So again, practice schedule, 5 days a week, at least during the school year, 5:30 to 7 o'clock. And then Saturday mornings, I would go down to Peabody and take another, private lesson every Saturday for 1 hour. Sundays was off. At least from what I remember. Maybe Sundays we did practice, but I recall Sundays being off. Summertime, because I don't think I took lessons at Peabody during the summer, so my father doubled the practice. So we would practice now from 1 until 2:30, and then I go outside, play with my friends again, basketball, all that good stuff, from say 2:30 until 5. Yeah. Come back in the house. Time to practice one more time. Eat dinner, bed, do it again the next day.
I mean, that's a schedule, I think, that kind of builds up that strength, that sort of that memory, that muscle, that creative muscle, if you will. So going from sort of like being a shorty with the milk crates and doing the rigorous schedule, tell me about like what that first gig was like, like to set that stage for us.
First gig was at 5 years old. I played at the Waxter Center for senior citizens downtown, which that building is still there. I think it's still called the Waxter Center.
I think it is, yeah.
Cathedral Street, right close to the School for the Arts. knowing my father, and just because I was so young, 5 years old, I probably played like little tiny stuff, just like the Minuet in G. It's by Mozart. Beep, do 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 beep, da 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 do. Something like that. I probably played that on the bells. The bells is like the instrument that most kids get in elementary school. It's only like maybe 3 feet wide, 3 feet long. I probably played it on that. Probably had a drum set. I don't know, man. When I look back at a lot of this stuff, especially like just my father. I mean, he did everything. I mean, it's just looking, thinking about how hectic a school teacher is.
Mm-hmm.
And he came out, when it's time for me to perform, he would break down all these instruments, load them in the car and play. But I think that was the first gig. I mean, I'm pretty sure that was like one of the first gigs that I ever did. Something just small, like introducing Warren Wolf, and you play like 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But my career was really mainly headed into the classical world.
Yeah.
Playing jazz was not just jazz, popular music, I should say. It was hard.
Yeah.
So I know you probably got a question here, but I just want to just go on this. Like I said, my father played as well.
Yeah.
So he had a band that used to come over to the house on every Saturday, and they would rehearse. So I used to, when I was home, like sometimes if I didn't go outside, whatever, I would just be in the house playing with my sisters or, to get ready for dinner with my mom. But you could hear that music clearly coming out of the basement. And since this is the 80s, they were playing Anita Baker music, like that whole record, Sweet Love, Grover Washington, Spiral Gyra, Yellow Jackets, all these contemporary things. It wasn't just jazz. The only bit of jazz they probably might have played could have been something by Miles Davis, like one of like So What, a song like that.
Yeah.
I used to just hear them all the time, like, man, they sound good. So I would just go downstairs on the bottom of the step and I would just sit there and listen, but I had no idea about improv. But I could play some classical, that skill was just coming up.
Yeah.
So that was my first gig. And then, I just kept on with these lessons at Peabody. And then I know I did a couple more gigs after that, but I'll stop after I say this. So really what happened, the Baltimore Symphony asked me if I could be a part of this piece called the Pied Piper Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So most people have probably never heard of that, but I'm gonna make a comparison right now. I know I shouldn't do this, but I'm gonna go and say it anyway. So most people probably would know or hear that term because they're gonna associate it with R. Kelly.
Go on.
I'm gonna say that because it kind of makes sense though, because they always say, "Oh, R. Kelly, he called himself the Pied Piper." You know what the Pied Piper is? And I'll be like, "Yeah, I actually do," because I was one of those kids in the Pied Piper fantasy with the Baltimore Symphony. Yo. So for those listeners on here who don't know what the Pied Piper is and how they related to R. Kelly, but what the true story is the Pied Piper of Hamelin. This town was infested with rats. And the people wanted to get rid of the rats. So they called the piper in to play this melody as it relates to R. Kelly, come sing this song. But they called this piper in to play this melody. And what happened is once he plays this melody, all the rats will disappear. Mm. Now, when it came time to pay the piper, they didn't feel like paying him.
Oh.
So he played another tune which took all the kids away. R. Kelly.
Oh, snap.
Now, I'm not saying anything about R. Kelly. I'm not trying to get into that conversation, but that's why, where they get that from. But that was the thing that we went on tour with the Baltimore Symphony. So I was one of the kids. It was me and like 10 other kids. We played like field drum, it's a huge snare drum. Yeah. We look like little marching bands. I had on these like shorts with suspenders and a white shirt. We had a hat with a feather, and we all came on stage and we with this famous flautist named by the name of James Galway, and he played this tune while we marched onto the stage from the lobby while the symphony was playing. He played this tune. We played our little thing on the drums, and then eventually James Galway walked off of stage while all of us followed behind him. So that was our part with the Baltimore Symphony. We went on tour with that. I think I was maybe 6 years old. We did that tour for about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I played, and again, I'm 6 years old. I don't really know where we're playing at and how prestigious these halls are. We played Boston Symphony Hall. We played Carnegie Hall in New York. We played Richmond Symphony Hall, in Richmond, Virginia. We played a couple other places. We definitely played the Meyerhoff. And again, I'm just like, cool. I'm staying in hotels with my mother. Nice. We're not home. I get to stay in these fancy places.
Yeah.
That was the first real tour.
That's dope. Thank you for taking us back. So I want to, since we were kind of talking about the routine a little bit, like the past routine, can you describe us your sort of current routine, whether it's in the writing phase, whether it's in the practice phase? Tell us about that, what you're doing like currently.
As far as practicing goes, or just in general, my routine?
Yeah, your routine in general.
Well, it's kind of different now because life happens. So right now I'm married. I have my 2 kids at home. They're only 8 and 6. So I have to try to balance. They always come first, but I have to do the other things as well. So I'm currently a teacher at Peabody Conservatory in the jazz department. I've been there for about 5 years. I also teach at San Francisco Conservatory in California. So managing, it's not like I'm going out there all the time, but still I have both of those jobs, as well as, still being a husband and a dad. And then when I'm normally, by the time they go to bed, like for instance, when this is over, I usually go into my studio room, and a number of things can happen in there. I'll practice vibes a little bit. Maybe I'll just tinker around on the keyboard. Definitely not the drums. Maybe a practice pad. Yeah. Or I'll just start composing. Which is, I like making a lot of videos that I like to upload on YouTube because things have changed on the business side.
Sure.
Having video and content, I think you can never have enough of that because people want to see stuff a lot nowadays. So I spend a lot of time making music videos, right in my basement, a lot of time. And that's something that started just around right when COVID started.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say this kind of, took off during that time where, early on, you may find this interesting being a Baltimore guy, being a creative from here and artist from here. And, just early on, I was unable to get any guests. And then I had this sort of challenge of, from one of my friends, I'd be surprised if you could find 20 interesting people here. Mm-hmm. And I was like, really? In the whole city? It's like, word? And, once COVID was, there and people were home and locked down, then it's just interview at the interview at the interview. I was like, oh, okay, now, and just keeping up with it. And so, yeah. And I think during that time, I was able to kind of play, experiment, figure out who am I influenced by? I'd been podcasting for 10 years at that point, or 11 years at that point. And, when I was trying to really figure out what was my voice, what I wanted to do, how do I want to approach it, I had to think of who was I going to be influenced by? Who was I going to steal from? So I'll ask the question to you in this concept of theft, right? Creative theft. Who do you steal from? Whether it's, way a person maybe crafts a song, way a person maybe composes, way a person maybe holds their instrument, or have you. Tell me about some of those influences that show up in your work now.
It's a lot. Musically speaking, I got a couple different things I can address that question.
Please.
Definitely, music wise, let's see. When it comes to just straight playing, solo wise, I steal from definitely the masters. I love, and it's just not related to my instrument, but I love Charlie Parker, Miles Davis, Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, people of that nature. Even a lot of artists today, like Terrence Blanchard, Wynton Marsalis, people like that. But then the promoting side, I look at it. I should not have named just jazz artists because I love R&B and stuff like that. I look at artists like Stokely from Mint Condition, to a certain degree, Beyonce. And I'm only saying that because I'm looking at all of this stuff like on the promotional business side, like how do people market themselves nowadays? That's a whole nother thing now. Because matter of fact, right before I just got on this call, I was asking people, is websites, is that still a major source for people, or is everything just social media? So I'm looking at people's ideas about how they create content nowadays. That's me stealing ideas from them to bring it over to jazz, because a lot of folks in jazz, we still have this mentality like once we create a record, we just get reviewed and we sell CDs. I'm like, no, I don't think that's how it's done too much anymore.
Different thing now.
You can still do it a little bit depending on where you're going, but it's totally different now. Composition wise, maybe Pat Metheny, I listen to him. It's funny. I discover a lot of new music nowadays because me and my wife are very active, like health people. Mm-hmm. So I have the Peloton bike and treadmill in my workout room. So usually on there, I can always, depending on what I'm doing, say if I'm doing a 20-minute bike ride, I have the option to pick 20-minute pop ride or jazz ride, or well, not jazz. They definitely don't have that on there so much, but 20-minute pop ride, 20-minute hip hop, R&B, or Disney ride, or something like that. And when I'm riding, 20 or 30 minutes when I exercise, all this new music comes up, and I'm always like, wow, what's that? What's that? So I just hear these different things. So, I try to steal as much as I can, not anything particular. If I hear it and if I see it, I'll like it. I'm gonna just try to grab it and incorporate with what I'm doing.
Your mileage may vary. Take the pieces of it that you want and that you find interest in, and the rest of them is like, this, go back. That's for you. That's good. That's great. I'm going to use this. And as a person that, like, I'll say, like, there was this shift at one point, and I like that you said you discovered music that way. Like, because I read about you being a bit of a gym rat. I read that somewhere, and I was like, all right, this guy. And I find that I'll dive into old music and discovering it, especially when I'm in the gym. It's like, oh, let me just do enhance on Spotify and just let it do its thing. And but when I was younger, I want to say I would get on like Pigeons and Planes and these different platforms to try to find something. Mm-hmm. And I'll say this: the only records, because I got into this recently, the only records that I have in my home, I think I had like 8 records in my home. The rest of it is everything is just digital, and it's really, when we're in this space of, how many tangible things we're going to have, because we have a limited amount of space, you really like those things if you have the tangible copy of it. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
The majority of them are jazz records. I have like 3 Charles Mingus records because, one, I feel like I have a podcast sensibility. It's like I'll yell at somebody on the stage. I feel like I have that vibe. But that's the way I kind of discover it. And I find that I could just put one of those records on and just vibe out. Whereas it's music that, like, what is it? Black Saint and the Center Lady. That's an album from like the 60s. And I'm like, this is great. This is crisp. And I'm not even like checking to skip it. I'm just like letting it roll. Whereas now when I encounter something that this is kind of cool, this slaps, it feels disposable. Doesn't make me want to come and look for it. It's just like, all right, cool. That syncs up really well with a video, some highlights from Lamar or something. That's really cool. I'm going to keep it rolling.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about, in that vein of like music, maybe from the past that has some influence. Let's talk a little bit about, I think this is your most recent album, right? Reincarnation?
Yes.
So let's talk about that a little bit. What does it reveal about you? I'm hearing, there's some influences from the 90s, from your this phase of growing up and all of that. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, man. So, coming from my college, I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston. I was pretty much, I've always been a fan of like just R&B and hip hop, always. Coming from my 2 sisters. And being a 90s kid, like, being in high school, middle school and high school in the 90s, I just love that stuff. I feel like that's some of the greatest music being, made. A lot of stuff today, some of it I like, other stuff I'm like, what did he say? But, I decided I wanted to do something completely different. It's all about change. My first, I think, I'm coming out with album number 10 very soon. So I think around number 7, I realized that a lot of the records I've done were pretty much in the straight ahead jazz vein. Now they were all still like different concepts. You know, one was different from the other. Nothing was ever the same. You know, like my first record on this label called Mack Ave, it's just titled Warren Wolf. That record was basically, I just came out hitting. I was like, all right, let's just introduce me. Here it is. No concept at all. I'm just playing my butt off. Right.
Yeah.
The second album was more of a hybrid between classical and jazz. The third record on Mack Avenue was, as my old manager told me, is more or less me hanging with the big dogs, like the older, some older guys who were, you know, just older than me. It was me showcasing that I could play with, you know, more people who've been out here. The fourth record was was Reincarnation, and the last record was the Christmas record.
Yeah.
But Reincarnation, you know, like I said, the prior three were pretty much straight ahead jazz, but I was like, I got to do something else. I was like, I got to do something that's like truly me. Like what do I really like to do? Because, you know, I like to entertain people. I want to make sure that not that I can't entertain them playing straight ahead jazz, but I want to just add stuff that had a little bit more rhythm, a little bit more flavor to it. So I was like, let's take it back. You know, just play some tunes with the beat a little bit. You know what I mean? I wanted to make a record kind of like what I thought Rory Ayers would make today, but just in Warren Wolf's mind. So one of the songs on there that I really liked, that came out really well, was For the Love of You. Now, that's not 90s, but it's the Ozzy Brothers. But it's still one of those popular tunes. I was like, yeah, let me go ahead and knock this out. I put a little spin on there. Yeah. A couple of tunes on there. Like, for instance, there's a tune that I wrote for my vocalist. Her name is Imani Grace. The name of this tune is called In the Heat of the Night. And when I first heard How Does It Feel by D'Angelo, I wanted to make a song that was exactly like that. Well, not exactly, but the same feel, you know. And I decided to put that slow 3/4 beat, you know, boom, you know, that sexy groove on there. And, you know, I wanted people to really kind of think about that song a little, or think about my song, you know, they might hear like, oh, this reminds me of D'Angelo. Right. You know, I wanted to put that feel on it. You know, just, I guess the whole point of that record was to actually have people enjoy melodies. Yeah. You know, the other three records, I definitely had melodies on there, but it was based around solos. Solo. And that's the majority of jazz records. You know, it's like, all right, here's the melody. I'm going to solo, melody again. Mm-hmm. And I did that on this record too, but it wasn't based around solos. It was more like, here's the song. Okay, when we go live, when we play this record live, we'll solo it then. But I just want to get y'all to understand this, you know, the melody side of the record. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to tour anything about this record. I mean, I've done a little bit, but that record came out like right before COVID. And every date that I had was canceled. Every single one of them.
I mean, maybe an opportunity to do that thing. Like, I was listening to this morning, actually, I was listening to, I think, the live version of the AM Dawn weekend thing or what have you. And I was like, this is 2 albums on a tour, and one of them was like a COVID album. I was like, he was going to get everything he could get out of this album. It's going to happen. And, you know, maybe there's an opportunity to do that, because I would love to have that sort of vibe or what have you, you know, that 90s vibe.
It still is, because one of my good friends, he told me, he said, listen, just because a record came out, what was that, 2 years ago when COVID happened, that doesn't necessarily mean it's old, because there's too many people in this world who don't know who you are. That record could still be brand new to others. It's just old to you because it's been 2 years. So I can still keep promoting that, and I can always bring it back on tour. But also it just gives me more music to play. Like, currently right now I'm working on another record. Actually, it's not even current. The record is done. I just gotta go ahead and just get it in production. Good. So I can combine both of these records when we go on tour. But like, okay, here's music from this record, Reincarnation, and here's music from the new record, which I'm titled Origins. Yeah. You know, and it's kind of like part 2 of Reincarnation. I just gave it a different title.
Well, I mean, I think you know what you're gonna do. I mean, I'm just waiting for it to happen.
Oh no, yeah. No, just look for that at some point. I'm not in a rush to put this one out, because this is kind of going back to what I was saying earlier with the whole marketing strategy. Yeah. I don't want to just put this out. You know, I'm actually figure out a good route to do that.
it's a mix, and I was glad earlier that you'd mentioned Beyonce, because like I find like she doesn't even have to promote her stuff anymore.
No,
It's
not
like
at all.
B is dropping. You don't even
Yeah,
have to do that. It's just it's out. Like, yo, have you heard of Beyonce yet? New Beyonce where?
yeah. And certain people have that power. I mean, certain people don't. They don't need to promote it. It's like her. I look at like Dave Matthews Band. You know, there's certain groups that they can just put a record out. It's like, all right, cool, it's here. You know.
So I'm detecting this theme, and I've heard it throughout this conversation of sort of having this like diverse palette. And I share this with you, this diverse palette of musical influences, musical tastes, things that you enjoy. Speak about the importance of like being able to diversify like what you're listening to and how that like impacts like your work.
Man, I think it just makes you a well-rounded artist. I try to listen to as much stuff as I can possibly just listen to. Again, I mean, from jazz to hip hop to R&B. Let me just look at my phone because I've been down late. I was hanging. Matter of fact, the last studio session I had when I was working on this last record, I was hanging with another singer who was on the record. She made a special appearance. Her name was Allison Bordelme, and we went to school together at Berklee. But she was introducing me to all of these artists. Some of my students. Let's see, Wolfpack and Wolf. I think that's how you say it. Seven Dust. I've heard of some of the music, but I would never think about buying that music. Seven Dust, Tool. I was listening to some John Mayer. We went to school together.
You want to go John Mayer? Hold on, run that back.
Yeah, John Mayer. We went to Berklee together. Domi and JD Beck. I've been listening to them. It's just a lot of different people. So I'm just looking through my list right now, just seeing what comes to mind. Muse. That's another one.
I like Muse. Muse. Yeah.
Oh man.
I think
yeah.
part of that is like
Rufus Del Cell. I think that's how you say it. But I listen to all these different things, and I just try to, going back something to you said earlier, being diversify, certain things. I try to pull from all these different artists and just put them to myself. And I've always thought about that, and I tell my students that same message. I'm like, yeah, sometimes when you're young, you're going to gravitate towards one person. But then eventually for me, I was like, in order for me to get better and grow in general, and it's not even just music. I believe that way in life too. The more countries you visit and you get to experience different cultures, you see how people live, you try to bring them into your own. I've always been that way,
Very. Yeah, I think when you have a diverse set of interests, like in doing this, what have you, and we a Baltimore guy when you see a Baltimore guy, you know what I mean? And there's enough similarities there. And when I tell someone like, hey, I've been podcasting, I sound like this apparently, because apparently I don't sound like I'm from Baltimore, which is I'm a little offended, you know what I mean? But it's interesting where you have these diverse interests, and it makes you, I think, you're able to cross over and be able to be in different conversations in different pockets. And even with the people that you talk to, you're like, oh no, you know what you're talking about. How yeah, I know about that. Mm-hmm. And it's just like out of sheer interest. So I think you're right. When you're able to travel, whether it be creatively, whether it be literally, you're able to experience different things, or even, something as simple as like what you choose to eat. When I talk with people and it's like, yo, all I eat is the same thing. It's like, son, can you switch it up just a skosh, just a little bit? Nah.
Chicken box.
Yeah. So, yo, can you get wedges this time?
But no, you're totally right, man. Being a world traveler, I mean, that's a big one right there. Just like you said, for food, like, I've eaten some of the craziest foods that you can think of. I think about the many times I've been to Italy. I've had foods over there, but people over here you would never think about,
No.
But it just I think it just opens your mind up a little bit.
So I got two more real questions for you, and then I got those rapid fire questions. So here's the first one of those two last real ones. If you had the opportunity to change one thing about the music industry, let's say specifically your slice of the industry, what would it be?
If I could change, let's see, I would probably have a lot of. I'll answer that in two different ways. I wish so jazz musicians wouldn't be so complicated. I got to be honest. I wish they wouldn't be so complicated. I mean, I enjoy it because I play that stuff too.
Right.
But I like bringing it home, just letting people have a good time. But at the same time, I wish the entire world could actually see the beauty in jazz. Because there's some brilliant people in the style of music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People say sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, I'm just going to use Beyonce. she created this record in 2 weeks," and people are like, "Oh, wow, that's great." And I'm looking like, I made a whole Christmas record in 1 day. Not even 1 day. Give me 8 hours.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I wish people would embrace and see the beauty of this music, because the creative process is really great. But I think there can be a common balance, and I think there is, because you have a lot of artists nowadays who are bridging that gap. I mean, if you look at the Grammys, by itself right there this past year. Again, Robert Glasper winning Best R&B Record at the Grammys over Chris Brown. And he's a jazz artist. I've known Robert Glasper since we were 18, when he used to come to my school in Boston, because he went to the new school in New York. He used to come up there, and we used to just be playing straight to his jazz all the time. And he still does that. He's just not doing it on the main stage. You know what I mean? George Benson, he's been like that. He's a jazz artist, but he made his money doing On Broadway and this Masquerade. Let's see, Esperanza Spalding, she's been doing a good job at that. Christian Scott. And now we have the new vocalist. I think she won Record of the Year or something like that, or Artist of the Year. It was Samara Joy. Yeah. I just did some work for her. She got huge because she's a TikTok star. But we did a show up in New York at 92Y. Fantastic voice. Yeah. So, I mean, we have a lot of artists in jazz that are like doing great things on a national stage. I just wish, I hope that can continue for a lot of artists. That's all. I just hope we can all, basically, I'm hoping we can all come together and work together.
So this next and last question is very similar in that vein. So I think it's a good segue to it. From a music and cultural preservation perspective, what does jazz mean for like us and for society at large?
I don't know what it means for society at large, but for me, it means creative freedom. Creative freedom of creative expression. It's everything, but that can be argued for so much. I don't know. Creative expression, that's the best way I can explain that. I can say that.
I appreciate that answer. So, as we get to this portion, this is the rapid fire portion.
Mm-hmm.
I got 5 questions. Yeah, I got 5 questions for you. One, they're going to be goofy. I'm just letting you know.
That's cool.
So here's the first one. If you could only own one CD, so we're taking it to CDs. I didn't say a player was involved in it. You can only own one CD. What would it be?
Anita Baker, Rapture.
Okay. So I read that you're a gym rat, and you're always listening to music. What songs or artists pair well with heavy lifting? I see a little muscle over there. I don't really like it in the screen.
No, it's definitely there.
I don't like it. It's a little intimidating.
Let's see. You want one answer or 2 for that?
You know what? Dealer's choice. Give me 2. Give me 2.
Meshuggah.
Okay.
Rock and roll group. Tupac.
Okay. All right.
Tupac is my favorite rapper ever.
That's legit.
Yeah.
What is your favorite non-jazz song, or because it's hard to ask a favorite. So if you don't have one, what's a non-jazz song that you're listening to right now that you're like, yeah, this is hot. It just slaps.
Lady by D'Angelo.
That's a good one right there. So okay.
That was just off the top of my head.
No, I gotta ask you this one. What is like your go-to like snack or like lazy meal? You don't really want to put the effort in. You're tired. You're beat. You're like, I need to eat something. You're just like hitting the peanut butter with like the protein powder. What are we doing?
Double stuffed Oreo cookies.
Come on, don't say that. Don't say that. Just more stuff.
Yep, double stuffed Oreo cookies. Vanilla. Not the chocolate.
We call those light skin snacks, by the way. We call those mimosas and white cheddar cheese. White cheddar cheese is light skin snacks.
Yep.
Okay, this is the last one.
If I'm that's at home.
Okay.
If I'm traveling, you're bound to see me with some Twizzlers.
See, Twizzlers. Okay, I can hear you on the Twizzlers. I'll go with the Oreos, the light skin Oreos a little bit, but Twizzlers, I don't know, my G. I don't know.
Hey, it keeps me going. I'm good.
I mean, I do this fake, and this maybe comes from my dad, this fake trail mix thing where it's just like, yo, I got some regular like peanut M&Ms, and then it's like, let me get these cashews, let me get these almonds. And I'm like, all right, I got
once upon a time, I would do that, but not right now.
Not these days. This is the last one I got for you. If you weren't a musician or had any of the opportunities that were connected to being a musician, what would you be? What would your like occupation be?
Well, I kind of said earlier it would have been NASA or working for a fire department, but honestly, FBI.
All right, I'll take it. So, one, I want to thank you for being on this podcast. This is great. This is a great way to wrap up a Friday. And two, I want to invite and encourage you to tell the listeners. This is that part where you do the Beyonce promotion thing. Tell the listeners where they can check you out, check out your work. Check out your albums, all of that good stuff. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I had a great time. Everybody, if you're looking for me, if you want to find more information, tours, everything, please visit warrenwolfmusic.com. And if you need to follow me on any of the handles, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, just look for Warren Wolf 1. And Wolf is spelled with no E. WARRENWOLF 1. Warren Wolf 1, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. You can even go back. Now you can't go back to MySpace, but you'll find me.
I think it's they don't do the Wayback Machine thing. It's like, yeah, I found them.
Exactly.
It says Wolfman 1. I don't know. I don't know about this. And there you have it, folks. I want to again thank Warren Wolf Jr. for coming onto the podcast. It's great saying that name. And I'm Rob Lee, saying that there is art and culture in and around your neck of the woods. You've just got to look for it.